With Ontario asparagus available in markets and grocery stores right across the province and the country, it's time to start thinking about your favorites. One of mine is asparagus soup. I love the creamy richness, and I always add oyster mushrooms to it to give it that real punch of flavor. This is going to be a great recipe for a number of reasons. It's very rich and full flavored, but it's also nutritious. So at less than 40 calories per cup, asparagus is healthy and it's packed with antioxidants. The first step for this recipe is to get the onions prepped for the stalk, so let's start building some flavors. To prep the onion, just take the tip off, then the root. And for this application, most of the time I would be suggesting to develop flavor at this level. So normally I would saute these onions until they're golden and brown, developing that real caramel flavor. But what I actually want for the asparagus is just simply the flavor of the onion, so I'm going to poach it. When we make this stock, I'm just going to combine it so it has the onion flavor, but not that intense caramelized color and flavor. So a mirepoix cut. Now remember, because this is going to be blended, we don't need to be too fussy about the slice. With the onion prepped, it's time to prep the asparagus. Now, I'm going to look at the asparagus as two parts. First of all, I want to establish where the really woody end is. And for me, these asparagus are so fresh, there's not much that I don't want at the end, especially for a soup. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and I'm going to peel this, and there's a reason for that. This part in a soup, when you puree it, can be very stringy and difficult to break down. Now, if you've got a really good fine mesh sieve, you won't need to, but peeling it is extremely easy. And this is something good that you can do for fresh salads, or when you eat it raw. There's nothing like peeled asparagus on a sandwich. The next step is to take the tip. Now, I'm going to treat these differently. I just want something that's basically bite-sized. So what we'll do is, before we finish the soup, we're going to take these beautiful tips and we'll pair them with the oyster mushrooms. We'll saute that, and that's going to be our garnish. What that does is give us layers of flavor. So you have the beautiful soup that's warm and creamy, but then you have this slight crisp asparagus on top. So you have levels of texture and levels of flavor. To finish building this stock, I'm going to put the trimmed asparagus in, and I strip off a little bit of fresh dill as well. Not the stalks, but the tips are great. Remember, this is going to be blended. And then I've got a really nice vegetable stock that I made. This, and I'll bring this up to boil. Let that poach and those flavors come together for a few minutes. Wait until the asparagus is tender, and then it'll be ready to blend. The reason that I always make crostini with soup is, again, a texture issue. You got this beautiful soup. I love dipping bread. But if you just take a regular firm bread, it is nice. But with the crostini, you add a layer of flavor. So I'm just going to take and slice these on about a 45. This is ciabatta loaf. So the reason that I like ciabatta loaf is because it has all these nice little holes, which for me end up to be pockets of flavor. So I'm going to take these, line them out on the baking sheet, and then drizzle oil. I'll season it with salt and pepper, and then get them in the oven. You can do them on the stovetop. The thing about doing them in a preheated oven is they get completely finished. They're all the same, and you don't have to babysit it. Now that the asparagus stock has come to boil, I'm going to turn it down and just let it simmer. Tossing in a fresh bay leaf. I'll need to remove that before I puree. The one thing you'll notice is I didn't season. Because this is going to reduce and we're going to change the consistency and we're going to be adding flavors, I'll check seasoning right at the end. Once the crostini are nicely browned and fragrant, it's time to add one more flavor additive. We're going to do a little bit of garlic. This is a very subtle way to do garlic. So all you have to do is simply break out a clove, peel it, slice it in half, and then it's really important to do while the bread is warm. Just gently rub across it a couple times. This will give you a really nice flavor of garlic without a lot of intense garlic flavor, but it is going to be so noticeable and a perfect pairing with the asparagus soup. Once your stock is complete, make sure to use either a blender, food processor, or immersion blender. And when you do, double check to make sure that it's good and it's heat safe. Now, what you have to do is just simply ladle in the stock. Be careful as you do, it's very hot. And what you'll get is once you fill it up, Blend it until it's as smooth as possible. If you find that it has any textures, run it through a fine mesh sieve, and then we're going to finish this up on the stovetop with a roux. That's an equal portion of butter with flour. That's going to be the thickener to make it nice and rich. A roux is equal parts butter and all-purpose flour, and for this purpose we want a white roux. So in other words, we don't want to brown the butter at all. Figure 75 grams of butter and 75 grams of flour for about 1 liter of liquid. That way you'll get the right consistency. Remember, this is going to firm up quickly, and if you do put too much in, it'll be very thick, and if you don't get enough, you'll need more. So whisk the butter until it's just melted. Then I'm going to gently just spread some all-purpose flour right on top. With the stock completely blended and very smooth, it's time to incorporate it into the roux. If you're at all concerned about the texture or the amount of solids in the stock, use a fine mesh sieve to strain it out. Now gently pour it in. Be careful because it's hot. That roux will expand and begin to thicken the soup right away. It's going to need to cook for about 20 minutes for that flour to be fully cooked. Now this entire recipe is really coming together. I want you to see the texture of the soup, how beautiful that roux has turned it. And it's got to reduce and continue to cook for about another 10 minutes. Now, I've got 2 operations going on. You can see I've got butter in the pan, and I've got a pot of water, 3/4 full. Now this is just water, but I'm adding some vinegar. We're going to poach the eggs in here. About a tablespoon will do. And let's get some of these beautiful asparagus spears into the pan. So we're going to do this in one pan, half on one side, and then the oyster mushroom. I want these fairly large pieces, so I'm just going to tear them. Tear the base off. If it's a really big piece, go ahead and tear it in half. No need to use your knife for this operation. Just tear them. They tear easy. Then it's time to season. So I'm going to season with salt and pepper. Break that base off. And you can see how it's easy to do in one pan. They'll both cook in approximately the same amount of time. A little bit of cracked pepper and a little bit of salt. Then I'll gently toss these. I want to cook them both until they have some color and flavor development. But again, not too much color. I don't want a ton of caramelization. I really want this beautiful bright green spring soup to stand out. Once small bubbles form, use a wooden spoon to create a vortex. Spin the water in one direction. And what will happen is when you crack an egg in the center of it, it'll prevent it from sticking. So gently drop that in, and you can see how it continues to move just slightly. If the vortex stops, just continue. Do it again. And what does the vinegar do but help to coagulate the whites so that you have a nice, dense poached egg? When your eggs are done to a desired finish, take them out, put them on a paper towel or napkin and drain them. Make sure to get that excess liquid off. Now, if your mother told you to get your daily source of vitamins and vitamin C and fiber, you might not think about asparagus, but I'm telling you, these asparagus have just that. They're packed with all of those things, plus a ton of flavor. Look at the color of this beautiful soup. The nice texture of the mushrooms and the spears, along with that soft poached egg. When you break that egg open, it's going to be like gravy, and you'll be able to mop it up with these beautiful croutons. This may be one of my favorite ways to show the diversity of beautiful Ontario asparagus.